Welcome to Conversations with Laurel, everyone. I am your host, Laurel McHargue, and today I have a special guest. Her name is Kathryn Henry. Kathryn, welcome to Conversations with Laurel.
Thank you for having me, Laurel. Very happy
You're,
to be here.
I am happy that you are here as well. We're going to talk today about a book you've written, A Dime to Say I Love You, a journey of love, loss, and spiritual awakening. But before we get into your book and why you wrote it, tell our listeners a little bit about you and your experience in the corporate world.
Well, I started my career with a hard hat and a tool belt as a telecom technician. Not the typical beginnings for someone who ends up as a independent director in the corporate world.
Oh,
But I started there, worked for a number of years for a company for Northern Telecom, and did a lot of complex implementations of telecom systems, call centers, things of the like, and then was recruited away into the consulting world, into the Big Five, which was such a such a change from the world I was in. I had no idea what I was entering into, and that gave me my work MBA, if you will, after a few years in the consulting world. And then I was recruited into the apparel industry in doing roles that were the intersection of technology enablement for businesses. Because I spoke both languages. I spoke the language of business from the consulting and understanding business process and had the baseline of technology and ended up finding myself in chief information officer roles through the run of IT in different companies, including Levi's, Gap, and ultimately Lululemon, where my responsibilities expanded to be more like an operating executive. So running areas of supply chain, distribution, logistics, and global technology. And now I've left that day-to-day operating role world when the cancer returned and metastasized in order to go into the battle of that. And now I still am in the corporate world in that I am a corporate director and I sit on the board of Lululemon and on a company that an investor and co-founder of and do advisory work.
I should have worn my Lululemon shirt that I love. I absolutely love, and it'll last me forever and ever. You mentioned the cancer returning. And what we're talking about here is your wife, Lisa.
Yes.
And let me just say that A Dime to Say I Love You is a glorious tribute to your wife. Um, when did you know that you had to write this book?
It was I have two answers to that
Okay.
because the specificity of your question, when did I know? So if
Yeah.
I say when did I know, it was after I had been contacted by Forbes, got through a process of thinking I was being punked about writing a book, and took a few steps with them just to explore what I thought would be the book I would want to write.
Okay.
And I did in coordination with their book architect, developed a plan for the book. And it was really clear to me there that this book needed to come into the world for a number of reasons. The first of which was to honor my wife. And the second and third were a gift to my younger self, which I hoped would be helpful to others, perhaps, because going to the question from a different angle, Lisa and I had spoken about writing a book and how beneficial it would be if we would have had something like this before we entered into the battle we entered into, and even
Uh,
earlier in life to get some of these lessons, some of these learnings. And Lisa was very much a storyteller
yeah.
and learning through stories is a powerful way. So that's how it came together. But when I knew it was ready to be written or needed to be written was after getting into the process with Forbes.
Okay. And how did Forms find out about
They
you? And
sent me a cold call email, and I think it was through looking at my LinkedIn profile, which is quite varied. Working in a pro shop, being a senior executive, being a
Mhm.
technician, just a lot of different, being a yogi,
Yeah.
things like that in the corporate profiles kind of, or the LinkedIn profile,
Yeah.
and it piqued their interest. They were like, this is not your typical, profile. So, and a lot of people out there have not your typical life or experience and all have valid and important stories to tell and to share. But I think that's what prompted it.
All right. Well, that's amazing and wonderful, and so happy you did it. Tell our listeners a bit about what Lisa went through and how it was again, reading the story, I was just blown away because you're talking about an incredible athlete,
Mhm.
healthy, vibrant, vivacious woman. What happened?
Well, we were in Lahti, Finland. She was competing for, well, she had wanted to do the heptathlon, but an injury prevented her from doing that. That's a pretty significant event. So she was competing and throwing the javelin and a couple other things. And she had a lump in her groin. And we thought, oh, you must have an overdeveloped sartorius because the injury was in her foot. So we thought, from her overtraining that maybe that had
Yeah,
happened.
yeah,
And it turned out that that was a cancerous mass
yeah,
in her femoral plexus. And that's when life kind of took a major turn for both of us because we were incredibly active. We were both personal trainers at that time.
yeah.
She was competing in her track and field and coaching. I was competing in golf and doing training, and just the world looked bright for us. Anything is possible. And then this came along, which life sometimes does. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes when things on autopilot is when you get a little U-turn.
Yeah, and you had many, many, many turns. Explain what a dime moment is, because you talk about dime moments in your story, in your
A dime moment in my world is when I'll speak for myself,
Mhm.
find myself just completely caught in a moment of perhaps emotion or sad or just consumed, and something that is just completely profound and not in the place it should be in grabs your attention and brings you back to the moment. And it's a message. It's a way to snap me back into presence, to the
Okay.
present moment, which is not consumed with emotion or with anger or with fear, or with contemplation of what's going to happen or concern, anxiety, things like that. And literally, it's a dime moment because the origination of that is Lisa and I would leave dimes for each other. And we'd leave them as just a something to find in some strange, obscure place. And when you find it, you know it's a message of love, and
Oh,
it would just always, warm my heart. And the night that Lisa passed, when she transitioned, I call it transition
hmm,
because
hmm, yeah.
the soul doesn't die. It continues in another form on another plane, if you will. That night, when I went to bed and I was just empty, I didn't know what
Yeah.
the future would hold. I didn't know
Yeah.
like what happens now. I turned over and looked on her pillow, and there was a dime.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I still continue to find them. And it's been very interesting since writing the book. I've had a few people, one in particular, and well, multiple, but one who has a whole bag full of dimes who said, this was so amazing. Like, I get dimes too. And a friend of mine used to get pennies from her father after he had passed. And it's a real, apparently it's a real thing, and I'm not the only one. And I see it more broadly, and I call it dime moments because these are times where your heart cracks open just a little bit more,
Yeah.
from instead of being in a place that can close you and want you to extract yourself or pull back from living. Instead, it gives you an invitation to lean into what's happening, be present, and broaden your aperture on what's happening.
Yeah, that's beautiful. My father loved dragonflies. So anytime I see a
Oh,
dragonfly, I think of him and I smile. And I think of, my time with him and what I learned from him and all that. And anytime I see a bargain, I think of my mother because she was she was
Oh,
a bargain shopper.
yeah.
You have so many wonderful quotes in your book and different things that you talk about. You talk about in one place, you say that things aren't good or bad, they just are. Now, I have to tell, I got goosebumps when I read that because my cousin Kathy, Kathryn Kerr, um, went to Naropa University in Boulder, which
Hmm.
was yeah, a Buddhist run place. And back before she died, and she died when she was like 50, 52, quite a while ago, she shared that with me. She shared that idea, and we were talking about pain. She died of a
Hmm.
very, very rare cancer as well. And she said, you know, I sit with it. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. So how? It's not that easy, is it?
It's a practice. Even just I love the example of sitting with pain. Um, and someone I was just speaking to was doing some training, and it was actually with his wife in doing her birthing preparation. And one of the things that the doula, not is it a doula? Is
Yeah.
it yeah, that's helping them,
Yeah.
had them do was hold a piece of ice in their hand.
Oh,
And in the beginning, he was like, I can't hold this for very long. But after doing it again and again, he could hold an ice cube until it melted. So, there's a relationship we have with pain. It's just a feeling. And obviously not all pain is created equal. If your
okay.
arm is cut off, it's
Yeah.
going to be way different than holding an
Mhm.
ice cube. But one of my teachers, he used to go into the dentist and wouldn't take Novocaine even for a root canal. But this is a
Oh,
very advanced Rinpoche. This is not your general practitioner, if you will. So it's a practice. It's a practice with pain. It's a practice with our emotions. It's a practice with it, and why we need to face our emotions. Because if we don't face them, if we don't understand what they're telling us or what is deeper within that, we can never get through that pain or we can never, deal with it. So judgment of pain is where we get the good or bad. If we judge it, if we look at it and we say, what is this? Is this good? Is this bad? That's where we start blocking ourselves, is when we start putting judgment versus just being with it. And it's a practice to develop the ability to be with things longer and longer or be with more and more difficult things. I know folks who can't face grief. They just aren't ready to. And the second they think about someone they've lost that's very, very close to them, they have to shut down because they just haven't yet developed or learned any practices that work for them in order to basically to swim through those rough waters.
yeah, yeah. My husband would say pain is weakness leaving your body. I don't think he made it up, but it's that's how he lives. And
Yeah.
yeah, that
I mean, I'm aging and I'm very active. I do weight training, I golf, I walk the dog, but I've got, knee surgery from 16 years old, a couple others from even younger, and there's pain every day. And
yeah,
some days it is easier to push through than others. But every
yeah,
day is, just you meet that and whatever life presents to you and say, okay, this is what I've got today. Who am I
right.
going to be through it? Because it is choice. I love what your sister said. It's
Yes.
not good or bad. It doesn't have
Right.
to be good or bad. It's how you choose to meet it that
Yeah.
makes it good or bad.
My cousin Kathy. Um,
Beautiful.
Nelson,
I'm sorry, and
Nelson,
I'm
no, that,
sorry
no,
for
no.
your loss. That is
Yeah,
such a
she was a beautiful
early time
woman.
in life.
Yes, yeah. Um, I was, I was with her
Oh,
for a while. It was special. Um, one of your quotes in your book is from Nelson Mandela, and he talks about forgiveness. And another tough topic, right? He says forgiveness liberates the soul and removes fear. How were you able to forgive the abuses of your childhood. And again, you go into it in your book, but give us a little idea of how you were able to do that.
Uh, it started from being able to find my own strength within and not allowing the things that had happened to me to continue to negatively impact my life. Because the influence of those things are what contributed to me being self-destructive.
Mm.
So, in a process of healing myself, I had to let those things go. And in order to fully let those go, it required forgiveness. And that doesn't mean I condoned those things that happen. Those can those can those can exist separately. That can still be something that I don't approve of or condone, but I can let it go and forgive. Uh, So it was really part of the healing process. And true, complete healing could not happen unless I fully processed that out. And holding on to anger, holding on to resentment, holding on to shame. So it included forgiving myself for as how mean I had been to myself as well, and
Mm.
blaming myself. So that's how the forgiveness came through self-healing and becoming whole and complete again.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm thinking about forgiveness of those the doctors who were treating Lisa and the one who had a why bother attitude when you were trying absolutely everything and and keeping her alive longer than any doctor thought possible, right?
Yeah, it was amazing towards the end. That one doctor initially, and first of all, we had every doctor was fantastic. And even the first doctor, I did not appreciate the attitude. It was very, some of the things that happened were it made the journey more difficult when it didn't have to be. Uh, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Because of that, it made it very clear we needed a second opinion. So I also reflect and say, well, if those things hadn't happened and that conversation hadn't happened, and maybe we would have decided to have that individual do the first surgery,
Mm.
and we didn't. And so those experiences also led us down the path of the doctors we ended up with,
Yeah.
who were absolutely key to her living
Yeah.
with a lot of quality of life. I mean, there were tough times, and they're in the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
And they're in the book not because I wanted to share those in particular, but because true learning, true connection comes through storytelling. And
Yeah.
so delivering messages of how learnings occurred, how transformation occurred, I believed it needed to be anchored in real stories, including vulnerability of when you fall down, how you get back up. And that is key to meaningfully connecting. And that's why it's in there.
Yeah. Beautiful. You say, I think it's on page 179, you say, your life journey is about how you show up in the world every day. That is beautiful. I'm going to put that on my refrigerator. So talk about that, how you show up in the world every day. How do you
Well,
wake up in the morning? What do
one
you
of my
do?
favorite things to do even on a daily basis is to think about the choices I'm making right now
Yeah.
every single day affect who I'm going to be tomorrow. So that matters. And then how you show up in the world is it's just what influence you have in the world. What do you want to bring into the world? Do you want to bring in joy? You want to bring in light? You want to bring in laughter? Or do you want to bring in division, animosity, anger, hate? Those are the choices, and they are choices, who we want to be in the world. And I want to be someone in the world that, you don't necessarily remember what someone says, but you remember how they made you feel.
Yeah.
I want to be someone that they say, when I connected with her, I just, it was pleasant. It was good. It was
Yeah.
light. It was, not she walked in the room and I was drugged down. Don't want that. So our journey is the compilation of all our experiences.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's a compilation of all our experiences that we have. So what do
Yeah.
we make of them? And who do we want to be?
Yeah, making decisions, making choices. And I think there's too many people out there who don't think they have a choice in how they can respond to things. I think they
It's
just
why
let
some of the
things happen.
quotes are in the book. And the one
Yeah.
that and I mentioned this before in another conversation is Viktor Frankl. And Nelson Mandela is a great example too. These are folks that have been through some really difficult, unspeakable
Yeah.
things,
Mhm.
yet somehow find a path to love and healing and compassion. And forgiveness is key to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember years ago reading somewhere that if you can't forgive someone and you're still angry and upset, mad at them, you're giving them power over yourself. You're
Yeah.
giving them the power to make you feel bad. So why would you do that?
And that comes back to the healing question. So,
Yeah.
how do you fully heal? Let them go. Let them be whatever they're going to be. And don't don't allow it to impact you. The person who cuts you off on the road, why think that their world revolves around you? And they did it on purpose. And if they did, fine. That's on them, not you. Don't let it
Yeah.
ruin your day.
Right.
It
And
doesn't have
yeah,
to.
yeah. And you don't know why someone's being a jerk, perhaps. Perhaps they're not being a jerk. Perhaps it's an emergency. You don't know what brought them to do what they're doing. So, yeah.
Yeah,
And
a story
yeah,
that really impacted me on that one at one point was Stephen Covey, Seven Habits for Highly
yeah,
Effective People, like a
yeah.
hundred
Great,
years
great
ago.
book. Yep.
And there was a story of a family, a man, a father with his children in a coffee shop or diner, and the children were just being quite disruptive. And people were just staring at them. And it got to glaring. It was just
Yeah.
how rude, obnoxious, like, how could you be? You're a terrible father. What, all these things, all these judgments. And he approached them and said, "Sir, you're really disrupting the place here. This is kind of inappropriate." And the father was in a trance practically and turned to him and said, "I'm so sorry. We just came from my wife's memorial
Mm.
and we just don't know what to do. I'm so lost." And
Yeah.
that just
Oh,
completely changed. So you
yeah.
have, like, if you can choose what you want to think of
Hmm.
how someone's acting, that can drive you to a place of, hate and anger and judgment, or drive you to a place of compassion and love and kindness. And there are times where actions that people take have to be met with something, that
Yeah.
aren't acceptable, and
Yeah.
you need to take action and do something. But you still can do it from a place of love, a place of compassion, and still stand your ground for what you believe in and what is right. It doesn't have to come from anger. Anger begets anger. So if we meet it with that, nothing good is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. Tell us about your meeting with the Dalai Lama in India.
Well, it was a week-long trip, and the blessing with His Holiness was absolutely, it was profound just to be in the presence of someone that is that advanced in this life, that has achieved such a level of awareness, of self-realization, of awakening. The broader experience, though, one of the things that I enjoy is going to places that have deep spiritual roots, and going to the orphanage, going to the nunneries, going to the experience the monks chanting, hiking in Dharmshala with the monks through just basically mountains filled with Tibetan prayer flags, and just having that experience of being in a different world from what I experience on a day-to-day basis, certainly in the West. It's a life-changing experience. It's just a place where you can really open your heart and see the world through someone else's eyes, experience the world, feel the world, have that energy. It was fantastic, and it was capped with the amazing opportunity to be in the presence of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. So
What a
profound
what
and
a
so
what a
beautiful.
treasure. Yeah. Yeah. His quote, easy things are the enemy. They put us to sleep. Adversity is our friend. It wakes us up. I love that because it's so true, right? Um, a body at rest wants to stay at rest. A body in motion wants to stay in motion, right?
Yes.
Challenges, and I've said this before. I love challenges. You grow, you learn, you overcome things, right? And if you overcome something that's difficult or painful or whatever, you're going to learn more about yourself, and you're going to be a stronger, better person, I think. And so, yeah, he nails it there. Some,
And
yeah,
I would add that a body at rest stays at rest, body in action stays in action,
yeah,
grows, learns,
yeah,
and a mind at rest could be applied to that, a soul at
yeah,
rest.
yeah.
So our emotions at rest, not stirred, not dealt with. So having a life or experience where we proactively look at how do I stir? How do I develop my body? How do I stir and develop my mind? How do I stir and develop my soul? How do I deal with my emotions? And actively doing things that are your workouts, to exercise, to train, to learn, to grow, to expand those multiple aspects of who we are is to me the purpose of life is how do we challenge that? How do we learn? How do we enjoy? All of it comes together. But don't be at rest in any of those areas of your life or existence.
Amen.
And I think I would just add it's not even at rest, it's purposefully how do you take charge of those? Because they actually will never be at rest. It's just a matter of whether you are in the driver's seat in some way, shape, or form in actively driving where you want to go, or whether you're allowing life and experiences to just happen to you. What do you do with these experiences? Do you let them just happen and say, oh, shit, that happened to me? Or do
Yeah.
you say, oh, okay, what am I going to do with that? I may not
Yes.
like it, but what am I going to do with it?
Yes. Yes. Choices. We have choices. We have power. We have the
We do.
power.
We
I
have a
know we
lot more
do.
power than we sometimes choose to live into.
Yes, because sometimes it's easier just to let things happen, right?
Sometimes it's easier maybe to place blame, but what I found is, and this was at a young age, it, I wouldn't still be alive if I didn't find my power and make my choices. So it was literally, I guess you could, they say you hit rock bottom. Well, I think rock bottom is, near death. Uh,
Mhm.
so maybe it was that prompted me to find my power and to go within to find what's left when everything else is gone. The sooner you do that, the more beautiful life can be.
Mm. At the end of every chapter, Kathryn Henry, and for those listening to the podcast, we're talking with Kathryn Henry today, who wrote this beautiful tribute to her wife Lisa, A Dime to Say I Love You. At the end of each chapter, you have an introspection and you have space for journaling. And you also include excerpts from your own personal journals, while you were going through this was it 8 years? The
It was
8 year journey?
just shy of 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, of doing
it
this.
was
I
quite a journey.
Quite a journey. Are you still journaling?
I do some journaling. My journaling is different now. I do a lot more meditation. I enjoy writing, but I do it in different ways than that. The journaling I did immediately after her transition was largely writing to her.
Mhm.
That is largely. Now I still do journaling of experiences and things, and I talk to her on a regular basis, and I still write. but not in the same vein that the journaling that shows up throughout the book was written in.
Okay. All right. Kathryn Henry, you have sacrificed a lot over the years, battling to keep Lisa alive, which you both did together as a team, beautifully, painfully, amazingly. What have you gained?
Well, far more than I sacrificed, without a doubt. I think the biggest thing that I've gained is perspective. Just a completely different outlook on the beauty of this life that we have, this human experience that we have, and its meaning, yet lack of meaning at the end of the day. It means so much and so little. The
Explain.
perspective that, death is not death, it's transition. It's the flip side of that is rebirth. Whatever we're reborn into, spirit, soul, continuing in that existence has just given me so much more of a ability to tap into a peacefulness with life and contentment, even when the waters seem incredibly rough. Especially as I look around the world, so much going on right now, so much division.
Yeah.
Still being able to go into that quiet space when it feels like, how can certain things be happening in our world that I can't do anything about?
Mm.
Still being able to find a place of, okay, how do I come from a place of love somewhere, somehow with all of this?
Yeah.
And that's not easy in the human experience. Sometimes it's more difficult than others. So through the experience with Lisa, that was the biggest gift of bridging the eternal and the physical and having a completely different perspective on what it means to live and to live fully and what happiness is and what love is and what joy is. Just having a completely different perspective on that.
Wow.
Incredible gift. And the sacrifices I don't know that I would choose that word because I really do, even as difficult as the experiences were with Lisa, the depth and meaning that we found in those places where we connected, where it was connecting in like the ultimate death, that before those experiences would have prompted nothing but fear and anger and anxiety. And somehow we found the beauty in that. And it wasn't without fear and anxiety and anger, without a
Yeah.
doubt. It wasn't without that.
Yeah.
But we also found the flip side of that, which was the love, the joy. And those anxieties, those fears can exist if the opposite doesn't exist. The grief,
Yeah.
I talk a bit about grief and dealing with that, which was
Mm-hmm.
so heavy for me at times. The realization came through that had I not had this opportunity to love so deeply, I wouldn't have the experience of grief that was so
Yeah.
profound. And I wouldn't trade the experience of loving to forego the grief. So therefore, I have to accept it all and just live through it.
Oof. Oof. Yeah. You express it beautifully in your book.
Thank
Is
you.
there anything else you can tell our listeners out there? I mean, you've already given us so much to think about. Anything else you'd
The
like to say to them?
The one thing that was helpful in our experience is the AFGOs. So AFGO, the acronym for another freaking growth opportunity, because sometimes we felt like we were just getting hammered in the
Yeah.
rapids. And when,
Yeah.
something would feel like, we're going in a good direction and things are getting better, then something would take a wild turn and we would contextualize that. Sometimes we'd just look at each other and say, AFCO, because sometimes we have to allow ourselves to just be like, okay, this is a lot to take on. We're definitely dealing with a lot. Sometimes you need to just feel, and sometimes you need to just laugh it off. And so that was one of the triggers for us to recontextualize something because we'd been through so much and had learned that the judgment of things as good or bad or this or that really as time passed would change. So something that seemed terrible at one point turned good a year later or a month later or a day later. So we had gotten enough experiences on not judging, but the AFCO helped us to remind ourselves, let's not, let's not get upset about this. It's going to be a growth opportunity and let's just see what the growth is from this.
Yeah.
So I'd share that because it's and I've found with folks I've talked to about the book, they're like, you know what, that's helpful. And I'm
Yeah.
using that because sometimes it helps to recontextualize a situation that's difficult into, okay, how do I think of this as a growth opportunity? And what could I learn from this?
And this too shall pass.
And this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
without question.
Oh my goodness. Kathryn Henry, author of A Dime to Say I Love You. Thank you so much. I will have links below to how to get your book and your
Thank
social
you.
media sites and any other links that you'd like to send me. Please get the book, get it as a gift for someone you might know who is struggling with pain, struggling with loss, and it'll help. It'll help.
It is definitely a book that's written for the reader to
Yeah.
deepen their personal journey. That's the
Yeah.
purpose of it.
Kathryn, thank you, and I wish you the best and the rest of your life. And stay in touch. If you're going to write another thing, let me know. Okay.
Thank you. And I look forward to your book.
Oh, mine is
Thank you.
pure escapism. If you're looking for pure
Ah,
escapism,
nothing wrong with a little escapism. Thank you
again,
so much, Laurel.
thank you, and take care. Bye.